Welcome, welcome, welcome to Soul Healing for the Empathic Entrepreneur. So, my intention for this group is to bridge your spiritual practice with your business. And if you are sensitive, if you're an empath, if you're intuitive, as I've been discussing, we function in a way that we move through the world through our sense perception, through our heart's desires, through the sensation of feeling other people. And so I wanted to talk today about the benefits of a somatic practice for business entrepreneurs, especially those in this community who are coaches, who are healers. And the thing is, we all know a somatic practice is beneficial. Well, first of all, what is a somatic practice? Soma literally means a vessel. So the somatic practice is the utilization of your vessel in a way that creates, how would you say, clarity in your physical body, in your mind, and in your energy, in a way that allows you to reveal through the body what is going on many different layers. What is going on just the first layer of the body, the first layer of our body suit, the stress. What is going on in the mind? How is it like maybe looping in a certain way? What are the patterns? What is going on in our emotions? What is going on energetically? So it is like a doorway to so many layers of who we are. And number one, the benefit obviously is our soma is our number one tool, like it's the thing that drives everything. If we wanted to make ourselves a coffee, if we want to open our computer, if we want to drive our kids to school, our physical body needs to be in a state of readiness. But here's the thing that somatic practice and why it's important, and it's, again, we all know these things, but we don't necessarily always practice them, is when we, for example, do the first layer. So when we are utilizing the somatic body, the vessel, when we are having a practice that addresses your physical, mental, energetic needs, one, we do it literally through grounding in the body, through movement, through being in the body, through different exercises that allow you to understand your body in many different ways. And that, the very first stage of that, when we start to do that, and we all know this, as the practice that you enjoy, what's the very first thing it does? It starts to take the very first layer of stress in your body, right? So like whatever it is you love to do, badminton, basketball, everybody was telling me like the thing that addresses their physical and physical and spirit, and everyone had something. They had dance, they had animal raw movement, they had basketball, they had walking the dog, somebody was saying sunbathing even in the winter, right? There are certain things that we all know that when we do it, it changes our state of being. Our nervous system literally starts to shift out of survival mode and into a place that can, one, receive information, and two, perceive information. Because as a business owner, what are we constantly doing? We're constantly receiving information, maybe receiving information about our business. We're receiving information about our team. We're receiving information about the market. We're receiving information about our particular milieu, the particular expertise that we reside in. We're receiving information about, today was freezing rain. So it's like, my daughter had an exam today, so it's like, ooh, I'm receiving the information of like, oh shoot, she's probably really struggling right now to walk to school, and hopefully she won't be late for school. And then receiving information, from your team, your email, like there's so much you're receiving, right? And here's the thing. How are we perceiving that information? Because Information is just information, right? But if the first layer of our physical body, that first layer of stress is in a heightened state of stress, it is going to receive that information from a fight, flight, or freeze situation where it's a life and death situation, you know? And my husband came home and, he was really stressed out and he was upset that I didn't answer the phone because, he was driving in the freezing rain and then he couldn't find my other daughter. And that's okay. That's fine, right? And there's nothing wrong with having a stressful reactivity. But here's the thing. If we don't have a somatic practice that takes that layer off constantly, then 99% or the increase of reactivity to the world is going to continue to increase, and everything is going to feel like a survival mode. Everything is going to feel like it's a life or death situation. And my teacher was training us the other day, and the example that she used is they did a study. So I think this is important. They did a study with inmates in a very high level prison where they committed very serious crimes like killing one another, and they asked though the survey 95% said they asked how much time was there between your reaction to kill that person or shoot the gun or whatever you did and your thinking. And 95% said 0. So we can get ourselves to a level where it's like we're constantly in this reaction mode. And then all of a sudden, none of our what we perceive and what we receive is actually accurate. So it's important to, one, understand it's normal. Okay, I'm not saying you're never ever going to be stressed and you're never going to overreact or whatever it is. But again, where the somatic practice is beneficial for business owners, because we're receiving and perceiving so much on a daily basis, it's so important to take that first layer of stress. And if you were to work with me, there are so many different techniques, but the very first technique is to get grounded in the body. How can we actually continue to sense the body and utilize the way the body feels so that we can at least start with a first layer of stress, so that now we're not perceiving from survival mode, but we're perceiving what I call soul mode. What does our heart want? What does our soul want? So that's benefit number one. It's like you literally function from a different mode of apparatus. How do you say that? Apparatus? I know there's a word for that. There's a different mode. There's a different state of being. Okay? So, two, when we start to practice this movement, this grounding in this body, understanding different directions, understanding even the physical chain in our body, the physical the biomechanics, the tissues, the bone chain, the heart, the cardiovascular, the nervous system, and we stay there. Right? There's just that first layer, and then we kind of stay there in that movement. And maybe we're in and out, we drift in and out of it, but we stay there. What starts to reveal itself is deeper emotions. Now, why would that have to do with anything in your business? Well, everything, right? So if for example, somebody has a deadline that they said, okay, I'm going to finish this project for you, and you needed it to launch something or whatever it is, and then that person didn't come through, right? Your emotional state of being is going to determine how you receive that, right? And when we are in that survival mode, the first way that we receive that is blame. And we don't want that person to be the way they are. But people are people. No, everybody who's run a business understands people that work for you are always going to, it's not perfect. It's not going to be perfect, right? And so your emotional state of being, or for example, if you are a business owner and you're constantly needing to kind of promote your business, and your feelings of shame or doubt or guilt or fear of judgment or fear of failure are going to be present. So it's important to understand that in the somatic work, those layers that hold you back from the very thing you want are going to reveal itself. And why is that helpful? Because whatever emotion you're feeling, that are related to, and all of us, all human beings, right? Related to unworthiness, related to not feeling capable, related to not feeling significant, related to not feeling worthy, related to not feeling like we belong, related to not feeling perfect, will reveal itself when we get closer to what we want. So I always talk about this, right? When we get real, especially as coaches and healers, because what we want is so intimate and personal to our heart and our soul, our mission here on earth, the reason why we're here, right? It's so deep and personal that when we get closer to it, all of what we feel may hurt us, right? The judgment, the success, the failure, all of those things that we fear are going to hurt us, they come online to protect us from being hurt again. And that's a very subconscious thing, right? So it's important to understand through the portal of your body, you can continue to work with that. And not that those feelings of doubt, those feelings of shame, those feelings of fear of judgment are going to go away. But we get to a point where we know how to collaborate with the way we feel. Because here's the thing in healing, and anybody who's on a healing path or is interested in self-transformation, not everyone is. But in our community, healing and coaches and empaths usually are, because it's challenging, especially as an empath, not to deal with our feelings and the way we feel. It's like it takes more energy to ignore how we feel than less, right? Than to just kind of numb out and just distract ourselves and just not stay on the surface because we're feeling so much. And so here's the thing about healing. Healing is a solo journey. It is an internal solo journey that requires support from the outside or from other people. So we are in it, and the only people that we're responsible for is ourselves. So not to be confused, like you're going to do this as a lone wolf and you never, you don't reach out. It's understanding that whatever you're going through is your own personal responsibility. You are the responsibility of your own vessel, of your own soma, right? And maybe, if you don't feel responsible for it, the consequence is that you're going to project or blame or shame others with how you feel internally. So it's important to just understand. And here's the thing, if you're anything like me and my clients, we have been on this journey for a long time. So many layers get revealed and so many layers get revealed. And what we get to is our deepest core wound. So if you were to work with me and even get on a breakthrough call, we'd start to tune in and tap into what is your deepest core wound, because that deepest core wound is always going to try to prevent you from what you love and what you want, because the first layer is of protection. And again, okay, here we go. got a little bit cut off. So, and here's the thing. We experience three areas in our body that cause us fatigue. We have our mental scape. So, when we're working and dealing and reacting and responding to our what we have to do on a regular basis. We have our mental intelligence center. And we also have our emotional intelligence center and our physical body. And all of those, if we are not working somatically with them, will cause us fatigue, because there is only so much information we can put out and take in. There's only so many emotions that we can put out and take in, you know? There's only so much things we can physically do. So a somatic practice helps us manage our energy physically, mentally, emotionally, and energetically. So when we have a somatic practice, it allows us to give us a barometer of like, okay, you know, in my mental capacity, where am I? Because we all have like what we call it we have a certain threshold of decisions we can make in a day. This is important to know, right? So if you're utilizing your brain for all of this information, for social media, for more information, because sometimes when we're creating a business, we do all of these, like a million things, like create a website, do research on this, maybe take another certification, and it's a lot of information. But there's a certain threshold that we all have to receive and perceive, and at a certain point, when that gets at its capacity, then we can no longer actually function, right? So, you know, if somebody at, you know, whatever, at that max starts to ask you questions, you're not going to be able to necessarily respond in a way that doesn't overload your system, where all of a sudden now you're moving into stress mode. There is also emotional fatigue. So we all know, right, that our life, our world, we're constantly experiencing so much emotion. There is so much going on in the world that is beautiful, but is also very horrific. There are just emotions that you experience with other people. You know, we're not always going to get along with everybody. Somebody might say the thing that kind of triggers us, or feel like we feel judged or hurt. Like that's part of life, right? We don't like it, but we have only a certain amount, you know. It's like, and for me, I can see that accumulating, especially when I'm dealing with, okay, teammates, I'm dealing with acquaintances, I'm dealing with people in my, you know, in my clients, I'm dealing with my daughter's like emotions. Like there is a certain threshold at a certain point that we have, and also energetically, right? And physically, like, okay, you know, there's so many things that we can do in a day to the point that we're fatigued, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's important to know that. So when you have a somatic practice, you can gauge where you are, but guess what? We also can transform, because all of that information we receive in the mind, all of those emotions we receive, and all of that energy and that physical, the physicality actually can be transmuted and alchemized. So the thing that we have to understand in a somatic practice, and what we start to realize, is that all of this, the pain that we experience, the judgment that we experience, the emotions that we experience, the mental overwhelm that we experience, the physical overwhelm that we experience, is actually available energy. You know, so like I was with a client the other day, and she's like, "Oh, you know, I couldn't really meditate because I was fatigued." And here's the thing: that's the best time to practice moving or somatic practice, because that's also available energy. And it doesn't mean just because you're fatigued now that you're going to be fatigued in 5 or 10 minutes, because we have the ability to down-regulate our system. So like, let's say there's like, you're just doing too much, and like, you know, when you're doing too many things and you're doing 100 million things at once, then you kind of need to like, oh, okay, regroup. You know, like you've been out and you're like, okay, I'm doing a million different like tasks and errands, and then you need to regroup, right? So you need to down-regulate. But sometimes when we're fatigued, sometimes we can misdiagnose that, and we're thinking, oh yeah, I think I just need to sleep. But actually, sometimes we need to activate. And that's when we can really start to see, wow, okay, there is so much available energy. And here's the thing, it's like all of them work in conjunction. It's sort of like, you know, if I said, okay, I want you to walk down this beach. It's going to take you 4 hours. Go ahead. Right away, mentally, emotionally, physically, you may feel like, oh, that's long. Like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. Like, or whatever. I might say something else, something that, that doesn't excite you. Maybe walking down the beach for 4 hours is very exciting. But if all of a sudden you're with the water, or if you're with something you love, like the sun, or you're with somebody that you love, what happens to the time space when you walk those 4 hours? So, right, with somebody you're like, let's say, really in love with, you don't feel it. You ever have that happen where you're like hanging out with somebody, or you're talking to somebody, or you're doing something you love, and then you're like 4 hours earlier, you're like, oh my God, wow, I didn't even realize like the time passed so fast, right? So in somatic practice, we learn how time is malleable. And our time-space reality, whether we come into it fatigued or whether we come into over-agitated, we can start to shift the time-space reality, and we can start to shift the texture of our time-space so that we're not always seeing it linearly. It actually literally creates space. So when we create space in the body, we create space in time. When we create space in the body, we create space in time. And let me give you an example. If you're walking home and it was raining, and you were carrying 50 pounds of groceries, like we've all been there, you're like, I got it, I'm trucking, and you're like, and it's going to take me 20 minutes to walk home, blah, 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 and it just like, it feels like forever, But then if we're doing something we love, right? That 20 minutes feels like, oh my God, it felt differently. So as business owners and as people, when we have a somatic practice, when we have a way of nurturing our vessel physically, mentally, energetic, emotionally, we shift our relationship to time. And what is the biggest, problem or issue, or what we feel like in general in our business, is we feel like we don't have enough time, right? Because as a business owner, the things that we can do in our business is endless. It's endless, right? The tasks that we have to do. So if we're constantly in that task mode, and we're feeling that time space is always compressed, then what is going to happen, right? We're going to constantly feel that contraction in our body. We're going to constantly feel and perceive the contraction in time. We're going to constantly, then what's going to happen is we're just not going to have enough, we're going to feel like we're not going to have enough space to perceive or receive what's happening. Because here, as a business owner, you're constantly dealing with so many different fires, right? Emotionally, actually, strategically, what you have to do, because you are the visionary of your life and your business. So somatic practice shifts your relationship to time. And the big benefit of that is that it avoids, or it prevents overwhelm. And I'm not saying you're never going to experience overwhelm and burnout. I'm just saying that it prevents that, because what happens when we get into burnout, then everything comes to a halt, right? And sometimes that does have to happen because we've just been constantly not releasing the layers of stress, not working and dealing with our own emotional landscape, not dealing with how we're constantly utilizing our energy emotionally, physically, and through our brain, through our emotion, and through our physical body. Okay? And then what starts to happen, because sometimes in our business, we're constantly, in our life, there's always a problem to be solved, right? And so, maybe we need more money. Maybe we need more team. Maybe we need to kind of figure out how to, operate this part of the business. So the beautiful thing about having a somatic practice, instead of only overwhelming your mental capacity, it gives us a moment of clarity. Because what happens when we're utilizing the body? What happens, right? We change our time-space relationship, and then it gives us our ability to perceive and receive, but not just from the external world, but from our own intuition, right? Because the intuition is the ability to remember the past and remember the future differently. So all of a sudden, the future that feels like there's a problem, boop, all of a sudden we remember, oh, wait a minute, here's a potential that we can move forward with. Right? Sometimes in our business, it's like, oh God, I don't have enough clients. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough resources. I don't have enough skill. And then boop, all of a sudden, just like the answer to that problem comes. So clarity. And that's what you want to move from. We don't want to necessarily move and make decisions from a place of fear, because when we do that, it never really is the right one. Right? And then we intellectually know, oh, I really want this, and it like, even though it's kind of giving us what we want, it's never what we need, right? When we move from a place of fear. Yeah. So it gives us space in between that thing that, oh my God, we put all of our mental energy and our emotional energy in that thing that's the problem. And it's like, oh, but we take that energy and we bring it back in the body, and we learn how to alchemize it and utilize that energy, because energy is energy. And it really depends how we take it. So when we are going, like one of my clients is going through what's normal for a business owner. There's a lot of pressure, in his, like, he has 3 different businesses. So there's a lot of pressure right now for him to support his family, to pay the bills for his 3 businesses, to continue to show up and be the face of his business, to continue just to function in his relationship. Like, there's so much pressure right now. And we work in the somatic body together, because sometimes he'll ask me, like, oh, can we just talk about it, and it's like the brain capacity is already on overload. So one concept that we can start to understand is all of that energy and all of that overwhelm and all of that pressure and all of that stress, if we give it a body and we embody it, we have the potential to take all of that overwhelm, and utilize it and alchemize it, so that we can now utilize it and it doesn't crush our systems to the point that we can't function anymore. Yeah? So, so we always do movement practices for that reason, even though the mind resists and like, oh, I just want to figure out the solution. Well, the solution is give it a body. Right? So in somatic work, it is the easiest thing to take whatever the issue, whatever the problem, whatever the pressure is, and give it a bit of space. And all of a sudden we have a different relationship to the time-space reality that it exists in. It doesn't feel like it's all contracted. It's like, oh, okay. I'm not going to be crushed by this. Right? I'm going to take that energy and then, if you were to work with me, we just figure out, well, what's the next most obvious action? Sometimes we need to retract out of our business and just take care of our physical body, our mental body, and our emotional body, right? And sometimes maybe we don't have a choice, so then we can just figure out, well, what's the next most obvious action? What's the next most profitable action in your business, and the next most profitable action in your energy, right? Because if your energy is not within your somatic body, point number 1, you can't function, right? And if you are functioning, you're functioning from reactivity. And again, I gave an example at the beginning why reactivity often leads to an outcome that doesn't necessarily serve the highest good of you or your people around you, right? Because we go into blame, we go into shame, we go into critique, we go into judgment. And then what starts to happen is all of the very normal human things that we experience as humans, having emotions, having shame, having blame, having guilt, um, uh, having that voice in our head that we're not enough, we're not capable, we're not significant, we're not perfect, we don't belong, we're not worthy, we're not enough. Like all human beings that experience that, what starts to happen is not that they go away, but now we know how to collaborate with that, with those things that block us and stop us from what we want and where we want to go. And now we know how to collaborate and actually now take that energy and utilize it and create energy from it and alchemize energy from it. And that's the good news, So it's not this crushing, dominating, overwhelming pressure. And I know if you run a business, it is part of the package. If you have a life, it's part of the package. There is, it is very challenging to run a business, have enough cash flow, and take care of your family, and have relationships. So, it's not even that it's like we should or they would be great. We need a somatic container to alchemize all of that energy and everything that we're receiving and perceiving in our life. Otherwise, it leads into burnout. Or you're constantly reacting to life from that survival mode. Like everything is like a do or die kind of situation. Okay. Last one, which I think is a beautiful one, is what now starts to happen after all of this, all of these points that I brought up, is now you have more room and more clarity around what you love. Sometimes we're running a business and it's like we've been doing it for so long and then we don't even realize that it's not exactly what we want, especially those coaches and healers out there, because you have so many certifications, you have so many, and it's a natural thing that your business evolves based on how you're evolving, the people that you work with, the way you work, what you teach, how you offer your healing to the world evolves. But sometimes we get kind of stuck in the old version of ourselves, right? It's like I had a client and, she was doing massage therapy, but, she wanted to shift out of that, into other like modalities, into deeper healing in her work with other people, and just a different way of working with people. But she was so used to just doing massage therapy, and there's nothing wrong with massage therapy. I'm just saying in her personal evolution, that was not satisfying to her soul anymore. She wanted something more for herself, more for her business, and more for her clients. So it's important to start to understand, like, what is it I really want and what is it I really love? Because when we start to practice and do those things, guess what? We feel fulfilled. And guess what? We have more space for joy. We have more space for peace. We have more space for laughter, right? Because the truth of the matter is, life is both, and I say this all the time, is both painful and simultaneously beautiful at the same time. So we need to be able to learn how to have space for the pain, and we also need to know and practice, what do we love, right? And it's and often too, not just what we love in our business, but what do we love in life? Like what are we excited about? Right? And when you do things that you're excited about, you have a different hop in your step, and, my friends know this, but like, I'm right now really passionate about tango. So like, my frequency and my vibration for my excitement to go dancing tonight is there because I'm moving in the frequency towards what I love, right? So I know that sounds obvious, but let's say, for example, you're like, what are you going to do tonight? I don't know, watch TV. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying there's that kind of joie de vivre is not necessarily there. And when we have the joie de vivre, then that frequency holds all the other shit, right? It gives us the energy that is going to activate us versus take us down. So let's review. The benefits of a somatic practice for business owners and just human in general, I believe, is number one, your basic functioning. You move out of survival mode, that everything is like a do or die situation, into what I call soul mode, where you're living from that spirit, you're living from that soul, you're living with that sparkle in your eye, you're living with that. People look at you and they're like, I don't know what it is, but you seem, like you're glowing, right? So it's that soul when you're answering to the things that you love, okay? So basic functioning, and basically, like, if you can't function with your body, then you can't do just basic things, like doing just normal tasks, like going to do the groceries or cooking or cleaning, just becomes so arduous because your physical body is not in its optimal state. Number two, it reveals deeper states of emotion. If you're chronically feeling shame or doubt or guilt, that emotion and that feeling has been there for a long time. And it will keep on coming up. And you may think it's the external world, but it is something that you're experiencing over and over again. If you're experiencing similar situations with people in different parts of your life, then it is an opportunity to see, like I was experiencing miscommunication, with one of the contractors that I was working with and with an acquaintance that I know. And it's like, what is this telling me? And so there was this kind of theme of like not feeling understood. Right? That need to feel understood. Interesting, right? And we talked about healing is it's your own responsibility. So how you feel in relationship to the world has nothing to do with the other person. It is simply how you are experiencing it. Everybody, like even listening to this, everybody who's listening to this is experiencing and receiving it differently. So what does that tell you? Is it the external, or is it what is going on internally? So as healing, we can only be responsible for our own internal experience. Now, I talked about the fatigue, right? Where it's like we can have brain fatigue, where we have a certain limited capacity to how much information we can intake and outtake. I talked about emotional fatigue. There's so much, like, oh, my daughter comes home crying because of this. And, I have a little argument with my partner. If somebody kind of like, we had a little weird thing, with somebody on the street because maybe they cut me off or something like that, There's like, and then there's so much emotional experience that we can have without getting fatigued. And then physical, obviously, Yeah, we have a lot of energy, but, at a certain point, our body needs to rest and rejuvenate. So what it does, somatic practice, what it does is it helps you kind of regulate that. And as I mentioned, sometimes we can misdiagnose feeling fatigue and think, oh gosh, now I don't have energy. When really, that is just potent potential energy that we can utilize. Right? the energy of fatigue is potent, available energy. The energy of an emotion, the energy of shame, blame, or guilt is potent, available energy that we can utilize and transform. So that's the beauty of a somatic practice. We can activate ourselves or we can downregulate ourselves. If we're feeling overstimulated, we can downregulate. If we're feeling understimulated, we can activate. And here's where I think some of us don't realize. Very often, activation can switch the gears. Now, sometimes you're always activating, you're always activating, you're always activating. Like somebody came into my class the other day, and she's a spin teacher. And she's like, oh my God. And, we were practicing meditation. So meditation is very like slow and we're breathing and we're not moving much. And she's like, if I was by the door, I think I would have ran out. But by, midway through, I started to like, and realize, oh yeah, right. I'm always so activated. Oh, this helps kind of settle the systems. So then what happens is when our body is more settled, then we can receive our intuition. We can create clarity of what we want, truly want in our life. And that's our North Star. Like the very first question, whenever we feel lost or stuck or something, we need to understand, like, what do I want? What is my clarity? What does my heart want? So that becomes your roadmap. So that you're not reacting from fear or like, oh, what if, and I want to go there. Oh, there is a challenge. Oh, okay, I have to do this. Oh, I have to do that. Like you kind of know on the way, there is going to be challenge. There is going to be risk. There is going to be failure. There is going to be, what do you call it? A disappointment of your expectation. But at least you know where you're going. At least you know what you want, And so then you should continue to move forward, because if we misdiagnose the disappointment or the attempt to get something going, then we sometimes switch gears, and then all of a sudden we're moving towards something that we don't really want, but we just think it's easier. But guess what? Like whether you build a life that you don't like, or whether you build a life that you do like, it takes work. Both take work. So whatever we practice, if we're constantly in the practice of not taking care of our body, or allowing all of those kind of shame, blame, guilt, all of those voices that try to protect us from where we're going or what we want, then that we can allow that to work for us and run our life, or we can collaborate with what the resistance that's creating in our life, and we can move forward with it. And lastly, it leaves room for what you love. I have I learned this from this teacher called Kyle Cease, to assess like how many 10 on 10s are we doing in our life. We could say weekly, but then on a daily, And if we have a lot of negative 5s or 1s or 2s, and we don't have any 10s, unfortunately, it's a recipe for feeling very down and depressed, And as much as we can philosophize of being stoic and being content and being okay, if it is not a 10 on 10, and so I use this because it becomes more mathematical, and it's more, you can actually measure. It's like an easy way of measuring and having an antidote and a real strategy to kind of live a more fulfilling life, because I think pretty much that's what most human beings are wanting, right? To feel fulfilled, to feel joy, to feel their heart. Maybe they might not know that's what they want, but I feel like if somebody who's kind of down and they're starting to see somebody who's really up, first of all, they might get really annoyed and irritated, but they also know, there's something there that I want. And so here's what you can do, right, is on a daily and a weekly, like all your activities, mark them. Is this a 2 out of 10? Is this a 12 out of 10, right? And then it will give you real data as to, are you actually doing activities that you love? It makes it very obvious. And then it also makes you accountable, right? Because who's choosing the 2s on 10s? It's not life. You are choosing it, right? If you're just sitting at home and watching TV and you think it sucks, right? You're choosing that. So that's the thing about healing. It's like it becomes harder and harder to blame the world. And that's an easy way of living, right? But it's never going to feel fulfilled if we're constantly looking outward and seeing what needs to change, right? But when we start to take radical responsibility and we use the tool that we are born with, right, then everything changes, and our relationship to everything changes. Oh, and I forgot to, as a recap, our relationship to time changes. And the texture of the moment changes. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this understanding of what a somatic practice can offer you in your life, because this is how I work with my clients, is that understanding that we have this beautiful tool, which is the body. We have this beautiful mind that can receive and perceive information. We have all of these emotions, and these emotions can not just be these downward spirals, but they can be very joyful and peaceful and harmonic, right, with the world and what we love. And then what happens when we do that, we start to shift our own consciousness, and we start to shift those around us just by our very presence. You ever walk down the street and you're like, and all of a sudden somebody smiles at you? Like, it changes your whole frequency. And, if you're in my community and you're a coach and you're a healer, like, that is your, that is your mission here on earth. That's what you're feeling called to do, right? Is to shift human consciousness, right? I'm not saying everybody needs to do that. I'm not saying you even have to be on that mission. You could be on another mission. That's totally cool. But that in our community, that's kind of what the tribe is about, right? Is to shift consciousness so that we, like that example I gave of the example between the reactivity between somebody who has just committed murder, like that. There's zero reactivity. There's zero time between the time they thought of it and the time they did it, right? So when we are practicing our practice, understand it shifts the world. And I know, our ego can be like, oh, but it's true. Your frequency and your capacity to receive yourself and love yourself and work with your own inner critique shifts everything around you. And I'm not saying we're here to change people. We're here for those who are ready to evolve and want to transform and want that healing, then we're here. And if it is something that we are, it's something close to our heart and we feel that we're called to do that, then we have that container. And here's the thing, we don't heal alone. So that's why I create these containers for other healers, because everyone needs their own mentor and coach. Like, even though this is what I do for a living, I also need my own people to hold space for me when I'm in a reactivity, or when I am in a mode of healing, right? So if you are interested in that, let me know, Jamie, I'm ready for a breakthrough yoga coaching call. You can DM me and just let me know, because on that call, we're going to get right down to business, and we're going to look at where you are blocked physically, where the imprint is mentally, and where it is emotionally. So we're going to get to the core wound right away. So this is not for the faint of heart. This is those who are on this journey, right? And who are interested in this work. And that's going to be the domino effect. So that all of a sudden the thing that that push pull, the thing that you know you want to move somewhere in your business and your life, but you just right, we're going to get to that thing, right? So we're not going to F around, we're going to get straight to it. And then that's going to create the domino effect for your continuous healing journey. And then you can continue to create that life that is fulfilling, of joy, peace, and harmony. So that's why I show up, and that's why I do what I do, and then work with the people I work with for that internal healing and transformation that eventually transforms the world and causes us to allow us to choose consciously versus unconsciously. So that's it. So I hope this was helpful. I will see you guys next week, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I want to hear your biggest takeaways. I want to hear, what for you resonated. Write me in the comments, and I promise I will come back and I will answer all of your questions, either privately or in the comments as you wish. And that's it. So thank you. And those who are here for the replay, #replay. If you're here for the live, #live. And again, DM me if you are ready for a breakthrough yoga coaching call, and we'll get into it, and we'll talk about the program that moves you through the journey of healing yourself so that you can live the life and the business that you want. I'll see you all next week. Bye, everybody. Thanks.